the Detroit Lions, a lot of question right now is coming up about their identity. One person on that defense and for this team in general, Alex Anzalone, he was one of those players early on that the organization believed in, that the fans were like, who? For a few seasons. And they were like, man, we got to upgrade. And then we saw Alex Anzalone block out the noise and become the best linebacker, become one of the team leaders, and become one of those guys that made the rest of the NFL cry. And then we saw them bring in Jack Campbell, and they started this narrative last year. Oh, he's like a green dot now. But we saw what happened when Alex Anzalone went out. I appreciate Jack Campbell. But there was a difference when Alex Anzalone wasn't there, and when they got him back just with the freaking looking like Bucky Barnes with the freaking thing on his arm. Like, it was different when he was back there. And what did they say? Look at all this pressure they're able to manufacture, getting pressure on the quarterback. Why? Because Alex Anzalone is so smart. And obviously with some stuff that's going on social media from Alex Anzalone, he's been absent from OTAs.
Yeah.
Last year of his contract. Got some kind of nice linebackers in the drafts ahead you could look at, as well as free agents, Jack Campbell, and some of the young dogs you just kind of re-upped with. Should we be worried about it? Is this an issue? Or should we be concerned about what this means for this season and if he decides to hold out?
I can't believe that Alex Anzalone will hold out. And it's not necessarily the end of the world that he's missing OTAs. I don't think he was present at the 2024 OTAs as well. But one thing that I have gathered, and I understand that social media isn't always real life. Everybody knows that Alex Anzalone, early on in his career, his first year with the Detroit Lions, struggled big time, especially in his first year with the Lions. And that means that what the Lions were able to do is that once he proved something in 2022, once he took a leap, the Lions were able to sign him for cheap. I mean, he's 3 years, $18 million. That's an absolute bargain for the production you've gotten out of Alex Anzalone. And Alex Anzalone, because he's never been like this until later in his career, because he wasn't a high draft pick and because he didn't succeed with the team that drafted him, Alex Anzalone has never really had a big payday. I understand that a 3-year, $18 million contract looks like a huge payday for normal folk like all of us in the room, but for a really good every down linebacker, $6 million a year is a bargain, and he knows it. And you know how I know he knows it? Look at his social media account right now. His last tweet on the 10th of May, 2025, it shows him just working out. Respect is due. And then there's a couple of other tweets that really went unnoticed towards the end of last season. And this is him, quote, reposting Justin Rogers. This is from New Year's Day, 2025. The impact of Anzalone's absence was unintentionally hammered home in today's film review. It's 2,500 words, so plan for a longer bathroom break if you're forced to work today. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Alex Anzalone was like, hell yeah, they're suffering without me. Alex Anzalone also on New Year's Day. Lions defense, and this is from Justin Rogers. This is Alex Anzalone reposting it. You guys can go to his Twitter page if you want, because it's been very interesting lately. Lions defense started a steady decline after Anzalone went out. Additional blows haven't helped, but getting back their captain should provide an unquestionable boost. And I'll tell you what, that went way under the radar, because I'll say this. If Aiden Hutchinson, after the Commander game, reposted something that was like, haha, you see, they couldn't get any pressure on Jaden Daniels without me, we would be raking him over the coals. And I'm not saying that Alex Anzalone is a bad guy or that he's not a Dan Campbell guy or that he's selfish. My point in that is nobody is acutely as aware how underpaid he is like Alex Anzalone is, because he knows that, judging by his production during the length of this contract, that he's earned like maybe a $12 to $15 million a year AAV contract. But when it comes to the Lions, when it comes to a team that is in the Super Bowl window, when you factor in the fact that he's 30, he's going to be 31 this next season, it's more complicated than that. They already signed Barnes. I think that they'll eventually end up signing Malcolm Rodriguez because of the fact that his second season he was a special team player, and in his third season he got hurt. I think he's another one that the Lions could reasonably get on an incredible bargain. Jack Campbell's the number one or the first round draft pick. I think the Lions were content with letting Alex Anzalone play this last year and then see where they go from there. But I don't know. Anzo definitely is feeling a certain way. I'll just say that.
Yeah, and I see some people in the chat. The Real K77 says, Anzo was on the field making plays with a broken forearm. Brad needs to pay the man this money. And I'm seeing a lot of the people with support for Anzo in the chat. A lot of people say, you know what, I wasn't even an Anzo fan in the beginning, but he grew on me. He was playing out of position and such. And, you know, to be able to see that type of support from the fans, it's a little different, especially when we're talking about what Riley Green, Hutch, and Kay Cunningham have had to deal with. There's a lot of people who understand what Anzo means to this squad. For me personally, though, Brad Holmes' job is to make sure that this team's Super Bowl window and its flexibility to make that happen can remain open at all points and all times. But I do wonder how much of, whatever the conjecture may be, is Alex Anzalone realizing, hey, you say you take care of your dogs. There ain't no more dog than me. I was here from the beginning. I was here when people didn't believe in what you guys were even trying to do. And so I do wonder how much of that is goes into effect. And then you talk about everything that he did as it relates to his effect on the field. It was noticeable. He didn't have to retweet that. Justin Rogers didn't have to post it. For everyone in Detroit, no matter what level of proficiency you have at watching the game, to know that Alex Anzalone was sorely missed. And as soon as he got back, it was as if you could hear the people talking about how good a player he was, how smart he was, and he's making plays. It was almost reminiscent of Dan Campbell's sideline saying we need some turnovers, and Carlton Davis goes out there and gives you two. But what else is also reminiscent is Carlton Davis's comments early on. He wants to be here, but then we started hearing comments similar to what we see Alex Anzalone putting out there. And then we all said, no, absolutely not. There's no way. He's a player. He's a dog. Look what he did. He's worth the money. He earned it, blah, 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 blah. But we understand how that went. Even with Big Z, we said absolutely not. And I know that because these are guys that kind of fit the mold. Guys that they didn't draft here. Guys that they signed, played a role. And even though Alex Anzalone has been here the longest and a part of that DNA, I do wonder with the shift from KG, with the shift to Kelvin Shepard as defensive coordinator, we know he loves Malcolm Rodriguez. I wonder how much of these things play into it. And I do believe this. The Brad Holmes of it all, I think it's just smart business to play it out. But if you're Anzo, it's probably a little less smart, especially after you just dealt with an injury
And
last
that's
season.
what's so crazy is that I think all of us at some point, and if I'm wrong, tell me, we look at the future of the Detroit Lions. We look at Anzalone being a little bit older. We look at how this year is his contract year. I think, and I'll just speak for myself, and I've heard the heavyweights even mention it as well. I've had plenty of times where I've looked at the future of who they're going to pay, who they're going to let walk, and almost glossed over, oh yeah, Anzo's probably not going to be here long term. But what I'm also starting to realize, and what we all should realize, is that Alex Anzalone is a human being. He's not just some chess piece. And I understand it's not our job to worry too much about his feelings. It's to explain that Alex Anzalone is hearing this as well. Alex Anzalone is saying, hold up one second. We would not be here right now if it wasn't for me. I have played under a contract in which I was very underpaid and played damn well. I deserve an extension. I don't need to be making, $6 million this year with an uncertain future. And you never know. If Anzo gets hurt again, like if he let's just say this, if Anzo goes out this year under this contract, balls out, somebody would probably overpay for him, and I don't think it would be the Lions. However, if he goes out this year and suffers another injury and shows even a little bit of decline, which he's 31, he's not 37, I'd probably doubt the decline, but if he gets another injury, maybe he feels like that could really stunt his earning potential. It's a tough situation
to deal with because the Detroit Lions went, and instead of making Lee McNeil play out the season, they did what? They gave him the money. And we understand it's a little bit different situation because there's a lot more potential and years that can be played there, hopefully at a high level for Lee McNeil than and Anzo was a little bit older. But part of me wonders if that's in the back of their minds. They have to take all things into consideration when you're signing a player like Alex Anzalone, when you're actually in prime position to go and make some really good investments in your linebackers. What have I said the last 2 seasons? And since Jack Campbell, they've just really glossed over the linebackers and said, we got what we need. Now you're coming up on 2-3 years of kind of glossing over that. The next offseason is going to be a third offseason. I believe that they're going to do something impactful there, whether it be through the draft, free agency, or you're going to have to decide to lock up Anzo. But what we do know is it seems as if Brad Holmes has made next offseason strategically. That's the year where they're going to have to make some type of decision. And that's where I get it. Like, he's not a chess piece. He has emotion.
Yeah.
He's earned a lot. But if you're sitting in Brad Holmes' seat right now, you've given yourself literally every avenue. We haven't seen a GM operate like this. Not even you're talking about all the constraints that you have in a capped league. We haven't seen a GM in Detroit sports operate like this. Obviously, we hope that it all culminates in a championship, so we could say this has been the most masterful GM job in Detroit sports history. But just looking at even the Anzo thing, how he handles Darius Smith, which even if we disagree with it, I still see how much flexibility he gives himself to even play at this trade deadline. So I don't know, man. This is a weird one because you need Alex Anzalone in the best of spirits, going 100%, every single play, because this is what we know him to be. And me personally, I think the Lions know that he's going to be that whether he has the deal or not. Anzo doesn't strike me as a guy to, protest too much in terms of his play. I would assume he would just not step on the field if he was going to play any less than 150%, because that's who we know Anzo to be.
Yeah, and if you want some context to where, because this isn't meant to attack Alex Anzalone. I want to give he is right now, according to Spotrac, the 27th highest paid inside linebacker in the NFL,
27th?
according to AAV. So I get how he's feeling. It's just
27.
The business of the NFL is it's weird when you don't really have your breakout until you are set for a potential big payday when you're past the age of 30, also coming off of an injury. So if I were the Lions and if I were Alex Anzalone, hopefully he will accept playing out the end of his contract. But who knows? If I'm looking at what I think Alex Anzalone could get, if you told me right now that he got an extension for 3 years, $30 million, I would take that any day of the week. Would he take that? Has he earned more than that? Yes, he has. But we're projecting as well, and they already paid Barnes, and they've re-signed so many other players. 3 at 30, and I'm feeling really, really good. Anything up to 3 at 36, and I'll probably be like, okay.
Do we know the situation? What's Malcolm Rodriguez's situation?
I mean, Malcolm, this is his contract year as well.
Yeah.
It's just with him, I think
he's gonna be back.
There's enough doubt to where you can lowball him a little bit.
I think he's going to be back on a good deal.
Once the linebacking core got better his second year, he was relegated to special teams duty for the most part. And in his third season, he went out with a torn ACL. He probably won't be back at the beginning of the year. So I actually think that moving forward, a great bargain and a great steal on a Malcolm Rodriguez contract is very possible. He played the best ball of his career last year until he got hurt.
People think you lowballing Anzo.
Think I'm lowballing Anzo?
They said, nah, he need more like 3 for 38 to 40. That's Weezy D. Randall Small, Sam, more like 2 for 30.
See, here's and here's
Ryan, don't lowball that man.
All right, and here's where I will give a bit of a counter. And the flagships, shout out to them. And this is where I disagree with something that they posted. It was posted by Will Birchfield, the Birchie kid. He compared what Alex Anzalone has done in the past few years to the Chiefs' Nick Bolton. And Nick Bolton signed 3 years for a $45 million, a $15 million a year average.
He's not as good as Nick Bolton. That's straight up. I'm
I
sorry.
agree.
I'm going to be the not slappy in the room.
Go ahead.
If he asks for something near Nick Bolton's contract, I'm not paying it. Linebacker is one of the most expendable positions in the NFL, straight up. It also is one of the least specialized and cared about positions when it comes to the draft. There are always rookie linebackers that are out there that are of high first round grade and they end up dropping to low first rounds and the high second rounds. Like, there's always a good opportunity to pick linebackers, and they're always able to come in, not always, but for a very high percentage of linebackers, because it's such a position where it relies on instincts and physical ability. They can come in here at such a higher rate and be effective. And so I think that you can draft, like, if you were to let Anzo walk, you could spend a high draft pick on linebacker, and he could come in there and fill that role. Or you can also look to the free agency market, and you can look to pair a more budget linebacker with a more aging linebacker. I mean, what did Quan Alexander get in not Quan Alexander, who went to the Greenlaw to the Broncos? What
Greenlaw
did he get
got
10.5
million per year.
Yeah, I'd rather pay him 10.5 than play Anzalone, straight up. Even coming off a torn ACL, that guy has proven that he has been a top 5 linebacker in the NFL. Greenlaw was a beast for San Francisco, and I personally, like, I'm not in the business of paying Alex Anzalone like a top 5, top 10 linebacker in the NFL.
And that's and Justin, I'm so glad you said that, because I don't have to be the bad guy this time. Alex Anzalone is not as good as Nick Bolton. I can say that Alex Anzalone is fantastic. I can say that I would be okay with the Lions re-signing him on a reasonable deal. But Nick Bolton, he's younger, he's been better, and I get it, a lot of that has to do with what's around him. But the Kansas City Chiefs, they can afford to do things like this. And I'm not talking about when it comes to cap. The only thing that they should concern themselves with is, are they just going to be a normal dynasty, or are they going to turn into the greatest dynasty in NFL history? If the Nick Bolton trade in retrospect looks like it wasn't a good one, fine. He played a big role in helping the Chiefs win 2 Super Bowls. Like I said, it wasn't all him, but he was one of their better defensive players. The Lions aren't there quite yet. They can't risk doing anything reckless that would hurt the team moving forward. And I do think 3 at 45 for Alex Anzalone is a little bit reckless. I'm not saying 3 years is reckless, but 3 at 45 is, he shouldn't get Nick Bolton money.
But Steve Lehman is right. When Anzo isn't on the field, this team suffers greatly. So he might not be as talented or skilled as some of these other players, but his effect on the Lions is something that, you know, we in Detroit sports, we've realized there's been those players who their stats might not jump out at a certain way, but we understand their overall and their complete effectiveness. And that's what Alex Anzalone does have going for him as it relates to the Detroit Lions, because they're going to have to figure out, can we replicate this? As much belief as they have in some of their other linebackers they have on the squad, this team looked completely different without Alex Anzalone, no matter how he looks compared to Bolton, or even the potential of a Greenlaw coming off of an ACL injury, so you can get a little bit of a discount. I think that's one of the more intricate things here when you talk about Enzo is, can you replace who he was in the locker room? Or can you replace what he was on the field? You know, can you replace who he is as a leader, his IQ? You know, and that because there was a lot of complaints about him, and then you see him not in there, and you realize, whoa, there's a lot that's missing. And so for the Tigers, if you're going to walk away from it, and you do trust Brad Holmes in this instance, you believe he can go out there and find that player, whether it be another signing, you know, or on the fly, because he discovered Alex Anzalone and believed in him before any of us. So again, I still give that tip of the cap to Brad Holmes to figure this out, though I do feel for Alex Anzalone, who's played well above his contract.
100%. And if we're just talking another factor to it as well, and I hope you don't think I'm hating on Alex Anzalone. I'm trying to be realistic. Whether you earn your contract or not, a lot of times is immaterial to how, let's just go, Brad Holmes feels like a player will project. I'll just say it, and I've continued to be consistent on this. Derek Barnes did not earn the contract that he got, in my opinion. What the Lions are doing is projecting that he's young, he was showing a lot before he went down to injury, and that this contract will end up being a bargain. So whether or not Anzalone earned it or not might end up being immaterial. It's an unfair game. It's just the reality of the situation. Like I said, if I were GM Flannel Sam, which obviously I'm not, I'm sure I'll hear it in the chat like 10 consecutive times, I would say, Anzo, play it out, or accept 3 at 30. Yeah, that would be my hard line.
And another factor that goes into my decision on why I don't want to pay Anzo $10.5 million is because I also expect another step from Jack Campbell this season. Sure. Jack Campbell's still young, and he eventually is going to take over that role of that number one linebacker. And so where I want this to get to is a point where Anzo is expendable. Like, I know Anzalone has played great with us, but his biggest a contributing factor that he gives to the Detroit Lions is the fact that he can stop those outside runs and he has that lateral quickness to get sideline to sideline. But you can just draft another guy who that's his specialty, to get sideline to sideline and support Jack Campbell at where he is his weaknesses, which is in the outside runs, in pass coverage, and you put him with someone who complements him and is good at sideline to sideline defense and covering the pass. And when you do something like that, and you can just make Alex Anzalone so expendable where you don't have to pay him $10.5 million, and he has to tie up our cap space, because we do have so many other players that we have to make contract decisions on in the next 2 years. We have Hutch, we have JMO, we have Brian Branch. Like the list goes on, and I'm sorry, Alex Anzalone is not as good as any of those players. I would rather pay Branch more money and let Anzalone go. It's just how it is.
I would too.
I don't
would
know
too.
if he's expendable, but the Lions are going to find themselves in a position to where they can't bring back somebody. And that, to me, is where when I look at Anzo, I continue to zero in on this. I love stats, metrics, and things of that nature, but I'm also somebody who loves the effect that a player can have on a team. And that, to me, is what I don't think can be undersold. You don't just replace who Anzo was because you get somebody who might be fast. We've seen the Lions go out there and try and make specific picks and things like that, and some of it doesn't work out, especially with the linebackers and some of the players on the defensive line. That, to me, is where, I do believe you can get players who can play the position, but are they as smart as Alex Anzalone? Are they striking fear in the opponents who are crying about him? Like, to see other players go on a podcast and cry, that, to me, I didn't hear a lot of these other guys getting complained about. I didn't hear a lot of other, people crying about Bolton or even crying about Greenlaw. I didn't hear that. But I do know that in our division, our opponents were crying about the fact that Alex Anzalone brought the hammer, and they just couldn't keep up. That, to me, is the type of stuff that's like, when you peel back those layers, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep him. And I am okay with them saying, okay, we got to take a next step up. But they have to make sure from an IQ standpoint that they can at least have some of that shored up if you move on. Because I do believe you can get a player who has better measurables and combine type numbers. But that aspect of it that Brad says, when I put on a tape, this is a football player, whether other people realize it or not, that's what they did to even identify Alex Anzalone in the first place. And so that's why I'm just hoping, like, if they do go down the path like what Justin is saying, which I'm okay with, I'm just hoping that they can find a way to replace all of the other intangibles that he brought to the game that honestly boosted Alex Anzalone beyond a lot of his limitations from a skill standpoint.
Well, and for the record, his numbers are really good too. Like, it's not like you can make a numbers argument that he's worthy of a huge contract. I also think another angle to this is that the way I see it, they already paid Barnes. I think they're going to get Rodrigo extended on a bargain.
That just feels like the inevitable.
Then you have to factor in who gets the extension. Is it going to be Campbell or Anzalone? I don't think they're both going to get it. Out. Maybe, but Anzo, take a little bit of a hometown discount. And again, hometown discounts are, I'm not saying he will. I'm not trying to be like pipe dream flannel. I don't think it's as simple as he's been the heart of the team. He's been good. Let's give him an exorbitant amount of money. I think when it came to guys like Panay and Amon-Ra, who didn't even get an exorbitant amount of money for what they've produced, it's more about they're young. You look at Amon-Ra, you look at Panay, multiple All-Pros, only going to get better, only approaching their prime. And with Alex Anzalone, you just never know. And when Jack Campbell comes up for contracts, I do think that he might ask for $18 million a year or something with the cap.
If there's not a hometown discount, what I'm realizing is this. You gave Amon-Ra and those guys these 4-year deals.
Yeah.
Jack Campbell, when he gets his deal, who's going to be up for deals right after that? Amon-Ra and Panay and those guys. So when you're looking at Anzo, if there's not a hometown deal in place, even before you get to the scenarios that Justin is talking about, I believe right now you can, stuff everything in the duffel bag and keep it moving to keep the players right now. But when you're talking about when you get to the Jack Campbells and then on to the third contracts, potentially of your Panays and your Amon-Ras and such, and you still got to cash out on Hutch, that's where it's just like, whoa, they got a lot that they're going to have to figure out money-wise. And this is where, again, shout out to Brad Holmes for keeping every single lane wide open. So if it's your lane of, hey, we're gonna lowball you a little bit here, Anzo, for the hometown discount, but I hope you understand business is business. We got to keep the window open. Or whether it's Justin's window that says, there might be some better plays here. There might be some better options here. Or the option I think, find a way to get this man somewhat what you want. Maybe it's not as big a discount, but allow him for 2 years. If you put the third year on there, give yourselves all the protection as an organization, and go out there and realistically know that the contract is for what he's supposed to do this year and a little bit of what he might have done to help you get here as an organization.
And there's another contract that was given about in the chat. I don't think he would accept this, but if he accepted 2 at 24, I would be okay with that. It'd give him next year, it'd give him 2 years after that. That would be his age 31, 32, and 33 season. I don't necessarily hate that because it has no term. I think 12 a year is a little bit steep, but that would make me fine. And one other thing that I want to read in the chat, and I'm not trying to be like a dick or anything, but Rando Smalls, how can you say that Alex Anzalone has been way more impactful than Nick Bolton? Again, whenever I say anything people don't like, all you talk about is the stats.
That's just not true.
But that's the thing. All I hear about people trying to victory lap over me is that Patrick Mahomes hasn't even been that good these last couple of years. That the defense played a big part in the Chiefs getting where they went to. And to be fair, Mahomes' numbers did take a dip in the regular season in 2023 and 2024 and even the playoffs in 2024. Who do you think was one of the driving forces then in them winning in 2023 and getting there in 2024 and having great regular seasons? It was Nick Bolton on defense. Nick Bolton in the Super Bowl following the 2022 season, he had a fumble return for a touchdown in the Super Bowl. And I get it. The fact that he's won something and Anzo hasn't, a lot of it is due to circumstances. I'm not obtuse to that. I'm just saying that Nick Bolton is a proven, super impactful linebacker on Super Bowl teams, including teams where Mahomes hasn't quite been the Mahomes that we're used to. So you can't say that. That's a slappy take. No disrespect, but that is 100% a slappy take. And that's not disrespectful to Anzalone. It's Nick freaking Bolton on the Kansas City Chiefs. Don't let people forget what this team has accomplished in the last 6 years. All of us Lions fans would give up one of their children for that kind of a success. Don't minimize, don't forget.
I do though wonder how different it is when you have a defense that is a little bit more built up. I know who Alex Anzalone has been here, and for large parts, there's been years where you could say he's probably your best player on defense. That's from the beginning of the sting.
One of them.
From the beginning of the sting, and then you look at the impact he had last year. You're not going to call him your best player last year because we're going to definitely look at those safeties, and we look at least the little blip that Aiden Hutchinson got off to, and we understood he was going to be clearly that. But that's where I just say we know this. We were on one hand when we win these ways champion this stuff. And that's what's so weird about Alex Anzalone. He is exactly the player that we generally would champion because we see what everybody else doesn't see beyond the stats. And that, to me, is where I agree with you guys as it relates to the Bolton of it all. But, I don't know. This is going to be an interesting one because I saw somebody else in the chat talk about the fact that here we go. Yeah, here it is right here. Burn, $5 super chat. Go look at the expiring contracts in 2025. There are a lot of guys we all love who need to get paid or let walk. Anzo, Amik, Reader, Bates, Skip.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up because next year we're actually $26 million over the cap for next year, going into next year where Anzalone will need this deal. And then in 2027, you really are seeing the contracts start to end, and you're really going to start having to make these types of decisions. You have Ragnow ending in 2027, JMO ending in 2027, Sam Laporta ending in 2027. You have Hutchinson ending in 2027, and you have Brian Branch ending in 2027. All 5 of those guys are going to become as free agents in 2027, and you're
Campbell
going to
in
need
2026, right?
Yep, Campbell in 2026 and Gibbs in 2028. So you're gonna have right there. There's just so many guys who you're gonna have to pay. I love Alex Anzalone, but I feel like he's going to be the one that is the odd man out because he's not an all-pro. He's not that elite level player that we have, and that's where you have to Super Bowl level teams. Like if you look at the Patriots dynasty and the Chiefs dynasty, they would bring in guys in free agency and the draft that were undervalued that would be able to play that Alex Anzalone role the way that Alex Anzalone did, but for a cheaper price and for a bargain rate.
That's what some people, I see him in the chat, and it's continued to percolate. And I saw Mark even say this as well. Shout out to Mark again. He said this is where he wished they would have given the money to Anzo rather than to Davenport, than to Barnes.
I mean, I don't hate that take at all. I've been more skeptical than some on giving Derek Barnes that kind of money, but I think that they project him to be really come into himself, piggyback off